Hey everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below, because what I'm about to say, I've never said before. And honestly, I've been holding this in for a long time. I think I owe it to myself and maybe to you to finally talk about it. You've seen the rumors, the headlines, the clips where people keep asking, when is Jungkook getting married? Or will he marry in Korea? And I've always laughed it off, said something vague like, someday. But the truth is, I already made that decision. I'm not going to marry in Korea. And I need to tell you why. Not because I owe anyone an explanation, but because I know there are people out there who might be fighting the same kind of battle I've been fighting quietly. See, for a long time, I thought I could balance it all: music, fame, family, love, and the expectations of a whole country that's watched me grow up. But that's a lie, I told myself, because it was easier than facing what I really felt. I love my country. I love where I come from. But when I started thinking about marriage, I realized something deep and uncomfortable. The life I want to build doesn't fit here anymore. It's not about the culture or the people, it's about the space to be real, to breathe, to live without being dissected. I've watched what happens when people like us, people who live under constant spotlight, try to start families here. The headlines, the judgment, the endless opinions. I saw how even small choices, who we date, where we go, what we wear, get turned into news. And I thought about what it would mean to bring someone I love into that, to make her part of this storm. And suddenly, it didn't feel romantic anymore. It felt cruel. Because I know how heavy this life can get. I know the price of every smile, every secret. When I told the members about it, yeah, every one of them had a different reaction. Namjoon just nodded quietly. That kind of understanding look he has when he already knows where your heart is before you say it. Yoongi just said, "You're not wrong, kid." Taehyung joked about how I'd probably end up in some forest in Switzerland or something, living like a ghost. Jimin, he just looked at me, didn't say much, but he didn't have to. He's always been the one who understands silence better than words. And Hobie, always the optimistic one, tried to remind me that love can survive anywhere if it's real. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I know myself, and I know this country. When you've lived your entire life with people watching your every move, you start to understand how fragile peace really is. I imagine the wedding, the cameras, the rumors, the millions of people debating whether the woman standing next to me was good enough. I imagine her parents being chased by reporters, her friends being stalked online, her past dug up and turned into clickbait. I imagine her waking up every day wondering if she ruined my career just by loving me, and I couldn't do that to her. Not in Korea. People think fame is freedom, but it's not. Fame is a cage made of gold. It's shiny and bright, but still a cage. And when you try to build something as personal as a marriage inside that cage, you realize there's no space for it to grow. Love needs air. It needs mistakes. It needs privacy. Things you don't get when millions of people are waiting to judge every word that comes out of your mouth. I learned this the hard way by watching the people around me. I saw what Taehyung went through when people made up stories about him and someone he barely knew. I saw Jimin break down once, not because of what was said, but because of what was believed. I saw how our families were dragged into rumors, how even a friend's Instagram comment could become evidence of something that never happened. And I realized that if I ever want to love someone deeply, honestly, freely, it can't be in the same place where every breath is recorded, analyzed, and twisted. It's not that I'm running away from Korea. It's that I want to protect what's sacred. The kind of love that doesn't need to be seen to be real. I've spent my whole life being seen. Cameras have followed me since I was a teenager. Every hairstyle, every tattoo, every smile, every mistake, it's all out there forever. And sometimes I wonder if people even know what my real voice sounds like anymore. Not the one that sings on stage, but the one that speaks when no one's around. I think that's why I started recording these little monologues, because I needed to remember who I am when there's no audience. When I imagine my future, I don't see luxury or spotlights. I see a small home somewhere quiet, maybe near the ocean. I see someone sitting across from me, no cameras, no noise, just peace. I see her laughing about something stupid I said. I see myself being normal. And for the first time, that feels like success. Not the kind that gets trophies or headlines, but the kind where you can finally exhale. You know, people always say you can't have it all. I used to fight that idea. I wanted to prove them wrong. I thought I could have the world and still have privacy, fame and still have peace, fans and still have family. But I get it now, you don't have to have it all. You just have to have what's real. And for me, real means choosing the life that lets me breathe, even if it means losing everything else. I know some fans might feel hurt hearing this. Some might say, why can't you just stay and make it work? I get that. I've asked myself that 100 times. But the truth is, every time I imagine building a life here, it feels like living on borrowed time. Like, at any moment, happiness could become a headline. And I don't want my marriage to be another performance. I've already given the world enough performances. I think that's the hardest part about growing up. In front of millions of people, you start confusing applause with love. You think if people cheer, it means you're doing okay. But applause fades. Love doesn't. And when you finally realize the difference, it changes everything. It makes you see that the truest moments in life are the ones no one gets to see. When I finally told my mom about my decision, she didn't say much at first. She just sat there, holding my hand. Then she said, "You've always followed your heart, Jungkook. Just make sure you can live with it." And I think that's what this is really about, learning to live with the truth, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. I'm not saying I'll disappear. BTS is my family. Korea is my home. But marriage, that's something I want to build in silence. Away from lights, away from noise, away from everything that makes people forget we're human too. Maybe it'll be abroad. Maybe it'll be somewhere where no one knows my name. Maybe it'll just be me and her, barefoot by the sea, promising each other things we'll never have to defend to the world. That's why I won't marry in Korea. Not because I don't love it here, but because I love too deeply to let this life destroy the one thing that should be sacred. And maybe that's selfish, or maybe it's finally honest. Either way, it's mine. I need to tell you something that's been living in my head for years, something I've avoided saying out loud, because once I say it, it becomes real. I've already decided I won't get married in Korea. It's not about fame, not about rejecting where I'm from. It's about survival, peace, and honesty. For so long, I tried to convince myself I could live a normal life here someday, that I could build a family and still be the same. Jungkook, everyone knows. But every time I imagined it, I saw the same picture in my mind. Flashing cameras, headlines, dissecting every detail, reporters outside the wedding hall, fans divided online over who she is, where she's from, whether she deserves me. And somewhere in that chaos, the meaning of love gets lost. When you've lived your whole life under a microscope, even your quietest choices become loud. I've seen what happens when people in this world try to keep something private. It always ends up public. And the truth is, I don't want to make someone I love carry that weight. I don't want her parents to be followed, her name trending every day, her smile turned into gossip. I don't want our memories to belong to anyone but us. So when I say I won't marry in Korea, it's not because I'm running away. It's because I'm protecting what's left of my peace and hers too. I've talked about this with the members, every one of them. Namjoon told me, you can't live your life for anyone's comfort but your own. Yoongi said it was about time I started thinking like that. Taehyung, of course, joked about how I'd probably end up living on some island somewhere, completely unreachable. Hobie smiled, said he understood, but that love will always find me no matter where I go. And Jimin didn't say much. He just looked at me for a long time and I could see everything in his eyes. Understanding, sadness, maybe even a bit of fear that I was really serious this time. because he knows how I am when I've made up my mind. This isn't about rejecting my roots. It's about building a new kind of life, one that doesn't come with a script or a schedule. I've been performing since I was 15. Every moment, every breath, every word, every smile has been shared. I've been loved loudly, celebrated publicly, but sometimes I wonder if anyone really knows what it feels like to live quietly, to wake up and not have your name trending, to love without being watched, to be able to hold someone's hand without wondering who's filming. That's the kind of love I want, a love that breathes. I've seen what happens when the world thinks they own you. They don't mean to hurt you, they just want to feel close, to belong to your story. But every photo, every rumor, every edited clip, it takes a piece of your truth away. And someday you wake up realizing you're living inside their version of you, not your own. I don't want to bring someone I love into that. I don't want to build a marriage that exists under the pressure of millions of eyes. It's strange to say this, but I think I finally understand what peace looks like. It's not applause, it's not attention, it's silence. It's being able to eat breakfast without checking what's been said about you. It's sitting next to someone you love and realizing no one else knows what that moment feels like. That's what I want my marriage to be. Not a show, not a headline, just real. And maybe that's why I won't do it here. Because in Korea, I'm never just Jungkook. I'm BTS's Jungkook. And maybe that's exactly why I have to build the next part of my life somewhere the cameras don't reach. I remember the first time the thought really hit me. It wasn't during some big moment. It was just an ordinary night after rehearsal. Everyone had gone home except me and Taehyung. We were sitting on the studio floor, tired, talking about random things, music, the future, and what it would be like if one day we had families. He said something like, "You'd be a great dad, you know. You'd be protective, stubborn, funny." I laughed, but inside something twisted a little, because I couldn't picture it. Not here, not in this life. I could see the house, the laughter, the warmth, but not the freedom. It felt like imagining a sunset while standing under 1,000 fluorescent lights. Beautiful, but never truly yours. That night I went home and couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything. The shows, the interviews, the flashes, the pressure. I thought about how much I've given to this career, how much of myself I've shared. I don't regret it. BTS is my heart, my family. But it made me realize something. Every chapter of my life so far has belonged to everyone else. Maybe the next one needs to belong only to me. And when you start thinking like that, you begin to understand how small your world has become. When I finally opened up to Namjoon about it, he said something that stuck with me. Freedom isn't always about where you are, Jungkook. Sometimes it's about what you stop trying to prove. He's right. I think for years I was trying to prove that I could handle everything, that fame wouldn't change me, that I could be a global star and still live like a normal person. But I was lying to myself. Fame changes everything. It changes how people look at you, talk to you, love you. It builds walls, even when you're trying to stay open. And no matter how much you love your fans, there's a part of your life that gets eaten alive by the spotlight. When I see Jimin, I see someone who understands that pain in a quiet way. He's one of the most emotional people I know, but he hides it under that smile. There were nights we'd sit on the balcony after long days and just stare at the city lights, not saying a word. I think he knew what I was thinking before I said it. He once told me, "You deserve a love that doesn't require you to perform." That line never left me, because performing, whether it's on stage or off, has been my entire existence. Sometimes I don't even know where the act ends and the person begins. Yoongi, on the other hand, was brutally honest. He said, "You'll never have peace here. You'll have love, attention, success, but not peace." I remember laughing when he said it, trying to act like I didn't agree. But deep down, I knew he was right. He always is. He's lived through the same storm, just in his own way. And when he told me that, it wasn't criticism, it was understanding. He knew exactly what kind of loneliness comes with being known by everyone but understood by few. Sometimes I think about all of us. Me, Jimin, Namjoon, Yoongi, Taehyung, Hobi, Jinhyung, and how different we've become since we started. We're still brothers, but we're all chasing our own versions of peace now. Jin found his in simplicity, Yoongi in creation, Namjoon in reflection, Jimin in empathy, Hobi in light, Taehyung in freedom. Maybe mine is in distance. Maybe my peace isn't a place at all, it's just being unseen for one. When people ask me, don't you want your wedding to be in Korea, surrounded by everyone who loves you? I don't know how to explain that. Love here doesn't always feel like love. It feels like surveillance. Like every smile would be a performance, every tear a headline, every quiet moment interrupted by flashbulbs. I don't want that kind of wedding. I don't want a ceremony that feels like a concert. I want to say my vows and actually hear them echo in the air, not get drowned out by cheers or camera clicks. I want to look into someone's eyes and see her, not the reflection of the world watching us. That's why when I imagine that day, it's never in Seoul. It's always somewhere far. Maybe by the ocean, maybe in a place no one's ever heard of. The kind of place where no one cares about who I am, only about who I've become. Where I'm not Jungkook the idol, but just Jungkook the man who finally stopped pretending he could live two lives at once. And maybe one day, if I ever have kids, I don't want them to grow up being the children of BTS's Jungkook. I want them to be themselves. I want them to run through fields without hiding their faces, to go to school without bodyguards, to laugh without cameras catching it. I don't want to teach them how to survive fame. I want to teach them how to live freely. That's something I can't do here. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And accepting that hurts, but it also sets me free. So yeah, when I say I won't marry in Korea, it's not rejection, it's protection. It's the only way I can love without hurting someone I love. Because loving me here means inheriting the noise, the judgment, the constant eyes. And I want her to have peace. I want us to have peace. Not perfection, not attention, just peace. There was a night not long ago when everything I'd been feeling finally caught up to me. We had just finished filming a long project and I came home past midnight. The city was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I remember standing by the window, looking out at Seoul, the lights, the sounds, the memories. I thought about how this place had given me everything. Dreams, music, people who believed in me, people who loved me beyond what I ever thought possible. But that night, for the first time, I felt like the city was watching me back. Like every window, every flash, every whisper carried an expectation I could never escape. That's when it hit me. This isn't where I'll start the next chapter of my life. This is where I grew up, not where I'll settle down. I sat there for hours, replaying moments that used to make me feel alive. The first concert, the first fan meeting, the nights we stayed up recording till sunrise. But something felt different now. Like those memories belonged to another version of me. One who still believed that love could exist in the same space as fame. The older I get, the more I realize that love, real love, needs stillness. And there's nothing still about being me in this country. Every step is echoed, every word magnified, every silence questioned. I can't bring someone into that. I won't. When I told Jimin again, really told him, not in passing, he didn't try to change my mind. He just said, then make sure you find somewhere that feels like home, not somewhere that hides you. That line tore me apart because he's right. I don't want to disappear. I just want to exist differently. Maybe that's something only people like us understand, the difference between vanishing and living quietly. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is step away. You know, it's strange. People think being loved by millions must feel like the ultimate form of connection. But sometimes it's the loneliest thing in the world. Because the love you receive isn't always the love you need. It's big, it's powerful, but it's distant. It doesn't tuck you in at night. It doesn't understand the things you can't say. I think that's why I crave something simpler now. I don't want someone who adores the image of Jungkook. I want someone who loves the man behind it, the one who's quiet, restless, and sometimes lost. I've thought about what it would look like if I stayed here and tried to live the dream everyone expects. A public wedding, endless interviews, a life that never really becomes private. Maybe people would be happy for me, maybe they'd celebrate it for a while, but after the confetti settles, what then? Would I still recognize myself in that version of life? Or would I wake up one day realizing I built another stage instead of a home? I talked about this with Hobie one evening while we were in the studio. He told me that he thinks love should always feel like sunlight, warm, effortless, freeing. And I realized mine has always felt like a spotlight. Bright, demanding, temporary. A spotlight moves when the scene changes, but sunlight stays. Maybe that's what I want now. Sunlight. Something that doesn't move away when the world stops watching. And Taehyung, he teased me like always. Said, "So you're gonna disappear to some mountain and grow your hair out." I laughed. But he wasn't completely wrong. There's something in me that longs for quiet places. I picture a home surrounded by trees, where the only noise is the sound of rain on the roof, where I can walk outside barefoot and feel human again, where no one cares what I'm wearing, how my hair looks, what I'm planning next, just life. Real, unfiltered, ordinary life. Sometimes I think about how our fans might take this. Army has given me everything, and I never take that for granted. But there are parts of me I've kept hidden, not out of shame, but out of protection. Because the more people love you, the more pieces of you they unknowingly take. And if you're not careful, one day you'll look in the mirror and realize you've given all of yourself away. I don't want to lose what's left of me. I want to save something real for the person who will stand next to me one day. Not Jungkook, not BTS's golden maknae, but just me. And when I picture that day, it's never big or grand. It's simple. Just a small ceremony, maybe by the sea, with the sound of waves instead of applause. No cameras, no headlines, just family, close friends, and the person who saw through all the noise and still chose me. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. Maybe that's what freedom really means. Having the courage to choose simplicity in a world that demands spectacle. So when people ask me, why not Korea? I smile now. Because how could I explain? It's not about where I don't belong. It's about where I'll finally feel at peace. And maybe that peace won't be here, but it'll still be part of me. Because no matter where I go, Korea will always be my beginning. But love will be my reason to start again somewhere new. The more I think about it, the more I realize how much of my life has been about trying to please everyone. From the moment I joined BTS, my purpose was clear, work hard, make people proud, don't let anyone down. That mindset pushed me to where I am today, but it also trapped me in a loop I didn't even notice for me. Every time I smiled, every time I gave an interview, every time I said I'm fine, even when I wasn't, it was part of that loop. Because deep down, I thought that if I ever showed doubt or weariness, I'd disappoint someone. But when you start thinking about love, marriage, family, you can't live like that anymore. Love isn't performance, it's truth. And truth can't exist in a world where you're always being watched. I remember a moment during a world tour, we were flying back from New York, and I was sitting alone on the plane while everyone else was sleeping. The cabin lights were dim, the hum of the engines was the only sound, and I looked out the window and thought, what if I stopped right here? Not music, not BTS, but just this endless chase to meet expectation. What if I stopped trying to be the perfect version of myself and just existed? That question scared me more than anything, because I realized I didn't know who I was outside of this world. I've been Jungkook from BTS for most of my life, but who's just Jungkook? What does he love? What does he fear? Who does he want to be when no one's clapping? That's why the idea of marrying in Korea feels impossible. Because here, I can't just be Jungkook. Here, I'm a story people think they already know. If I got married here, the focus wouldn't be love, it would be the spectacle. The headlines, the photos, the theories, and I can't promise someone forever in a place where privacy doesn't exist. I want her to walk through a crowd without whispers following her name. I want her to smile without wondering if it'll end up on a tabloid. I want her to be free, because I've lived long enough to know what it's like to lose that freedom, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone I love. Namjoon told me once that peace isn't found, it's built. And I think that's what I'm trying to do now. Build peace brick by brick with choices that feel honest, even if they don't make sense to everyone else. Yoongi says peace is expensive. I didn't understand that until recently, because every step I take toward peace means letting go of something I used to think defined me. Fame, attention, validation, they all feel good until you realize they're temporary. But peace lasts. Peace doesn't need to be liked. It doesn't care if people approve. It just exists quietly, like a heartbeat. I think Jimin feels this too in his own way. We've had long talks about what it means to give so much of yourself to the world that there's almost nothing left to keep. He told me once, you can't build a future if you keep living in the version of yourself everyone else wants. That hit hard, because that's exactly what I'd been doing, trying to fit into a version of life that looked perfect on paper but felt hollow inside. I was planning for applause, not happiness. And I think that's what people don't understand. Sometimes the brave thing isn't saying yes to what everyone expects. Sometimes it's saying no. Taehyung told me he thinks I'm overthinking it. Maybe he's right. He always tries to lighten things, to remind me that life doesn't have to be this heavy. But even when he jokes, there's truth in what he says. He told me, you're scared that being happy means being selfish. And that stuck with me, because that's exactly it. For so long, I thought that doing what makes me happy was somehow a betrayal to everyone who believed in me. But happiness doesn't have to mean disloyalty. It just means honesty. Sometimes, when I think about the future, I picture the members visiting me one day wherever I end up. Maybe I'll be living somewhere near the ocean, away from the noise, and they'll come over for dinner. Jin will probably tease me for cooking too much. Hobi will fill the room with laughter. Yoongi will sit quietly, analyzing every detail but pretending he's not. Namjoon will take a walk outside and end up writing a poem about it. Jimin will probably cry halfway through the meal. And Taehyung will bring a camera, trying to capture every moment. And maybe in that small house, surrounded by people who've known every version of me, I'll realize that I finally built a life that feels real. It's strange how growing older doesn't make things simpler, it just makes the truth louder. The truth is, I want love, but I want it quietly. I want marriage, but I want it peacefully. I want happiness, but I want it real. And if that means I have to leave Korea to have it, then that's what I'll do. I'm not running away. I'm just choosing differently. Choosing something that feels like me, not the version of me the world expects to see. And maybe someday, when I'm ready, I'll tell the world who she is. Maybe I'll even tell the story of how it happened, where it happened, how it felt. But it won't be a performance. It'll be a truth I share because I want to, not because I have to. And when that day comes, I hope people don't see it as distance. I hope they see it as what it really is, peace, finally. There are days when I wake up and everything feels normal. The sunlight through the window, the smell of coffee, the silence before the day begins, and for a few seconds, I forget who I am. I forget the pressure, the noise, the expectations. I'm just a guy in his 20s, barefoot, trying to make sense of life. But then the phone starts buzzing, the notifications flood in, and that moment disappears. And I think that's what made me realize something about love and marriage in this world. Peace doesn't last here. Not for long. Not when you're me. You can build the most beautiful life, but the moment someone finds out, it stops being yours. And I can't let that happen to the person I love. I've had people tell me, you can keep it private, just don't share it. But privacy doesn't exist when the world wants to know everything. The moment someone guesses, it spreads like fire. I've seen it happen to people I know, to artists I respect. One photo, one glance, one misunderstanding, and suddenly it's chaos. I can take that kind of pressure, but I can't let someone else suffer for loving me. That's the line I can't cross. That's why I have to make choices that protect what matters, even if people don't understand them. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if I did marry here. A big wedding, full of familiar faces, the members by my side. I can see the stage, the lights, the noise, the cameras. It would look beautiful, but it wouldn't feel real, because every second would be recorded, judged, replayed. The vows wouldn't just be between two people, they belong to everyone watching. And that's not love, that's theater. And I've already spent most of my life performing. Yoongi said something once during one of our late night talks in the studio. He said, when you've given your life to the world, you start to crave the parts that belong only to you. That line stuck with me. I think that's what this is all about. I want something that belongs only to me. I want to build something I don't have to share with the entire planet. And for that, I need distance, space, silence. I don't need to run from my roots. I just need a new beginning where I can exist without noise. Namjoon, ever the philosopher, told me, you don't owe your life to visibility. You owe it to truth. That's been echoing in my mind because when I think about truth, it's never loud, it's calm, it's patient, it's quiet. Fame taught me that noise doesn't equal meaning. You can have millions of voices shouting your name and still feel like no one's really hearing you. But when someone loves you quietly, truly, that's when you feel seen. And that's what I want, to be seen without being displayed. Jimin told me recently, you're chasing peace like it's something outside of you. And he's right in a way. Because peace isn't a place, it's a choice. But it's hard to make that choice when every inch of your life has been shaped by eyes that never stop watching. Still, I'm learning. I'm learning how to draw lines, how to say no, how to stop explaining myself to people who were never supposed to understand. I think that's part of growing up, realizing that not everyone deserves access to your story. There was this one time during a photo shoot in Busan, I remember standing by the ocean between takes, just watching the waves crash. And I thought, maybe this is where I'll end up. Not Busan exactly, but somewhere like it. Somewhere where the only sound is nature, not applause. Somewhere I can walk down the street and just be, I imagine being there with someone I love, far away from cameras, away from all of this. No fancy suit, no tuxedo, no spotlight, just two people promising to choose each other every day without needing the world's approval. That vision felt real. More real than anything I've seen on stage. I think about the members often when I imagine that future. I can see them laughing, teasing me, maybe complaining that I chose such a remote place. But deep down, I know they'd understand. Because we've all sacrificed pieces of ourselves for this dream. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that dreams don't mean much if you lose yourself chasing them. They've all found ways to protect their peace in small ways. Jin with simplicity, Hobi with positivity, Taehyung with freedom, Jimin with empathy, Yoongi with solitude, Namjoon with reflection. Maybe this is mind distance. Maybe that's my version of balance. Sometimes people ask me if I'm afraid of losing fans, or being misunderstood, or disappearing. The answer is no. What scares me more is living my whole life for everyone else, and never once truly living for myself. That's not living. That's performing forever. And I think I've performed long enough. So no, I won't marry in Korea. Not because I'm ashamed, not because I'm hiding, but because I'm finally being honest. Honest about what I need, what I value, what kind of life I want to build. And if that honesty costs me something, so be it. At least it's mine. For once, it's mine. Sometimes at night, when everything finally goes quiet, I lie there and think about what life would be like if I hadn't chosen this path. What if I'd never joined BTS? What if I'd stayed in Busan, working at some small cafe, or maybe teaching music somewhere? Would I have fallen in love already? Would I be married, living a life that no one cared to photograph or analyze? Maybe. But then I realized I wouldn't trade this journey for anything. I've lived dreams most people only imagine. I felt the roar of stadiums, seen tears of people who told me our songs saved them. That's priceless. But it also means that I'll never know what it's like to live without being known. And that's both beautiful and terrifying. There was a day when I was walking alone in Seoul with a mask and a hoodie, and for a few minutes, no one recognized me. It felt strange at first, like I'd stepped outside my body. I bought street food from a cart. I watched people pass by without a second glance. I even smiled at an old lady selling flowers, and she smiled back like I was just another boy on the street. For those few minutes, I was invisible. And I don't think I've ever felt more free. That's when I realized something. Maybe I don't want fame to follow me into the next chapter of my life. Maybe I just want to be loved quietly. When I imagine the person I'll marry, I don't see someone who wants the world to know her name. I see someone who doesn't care about that. Someone who sees me at my most ordinary and still thinks it's enough. Someone who understands that silence can be love too. I don't need someone to worship me. I need someone who can sit in a room with me for hours without saying a word, and it still feels like everything. That kind of connection doesn't survive under the pressure of fame. It can only breathe in peace. And that's why I can't build it here. I talked to Jin about it once before he left for the military. We were sitting in his living room, eating late night ramyeon, and I told him, "Hyung, I don't think I'll ever get married here." He looked at me for a moment, then laughed and said, "I get it. You don't want your honeymoon pictures leaked before the wedding even ends." We laughed, but then he got serious. He said, "You're young, but you already understand something most people don't. Happiness and comfort aren't the same thing. Comfort is what everyone wants you to chase. Happiness is what you have to build yourself." That stuck with me because it's true. Comfort is staying here, doing what's expected. Happiness might mean leaving. Namjoon says, "I romanticize freedom too much." He's probably right. I've always been that way, dreaming about things that exist far away. But I think that's what keeps me grounded in a strange way. The idea that somewhere out there, there's a place waiting for me to just exist, not perform, not impress, just exist. Maybe it's a small village by the sea. Maybe it's a quiet city in another country. I don't know. But when I think about it, I can feel the calm in my chest. And that calm feels more real than any applause I've ever heard. Jimin said once that he wants to live near me when we're older. I told him, "If you move where I move, the whole world will find us again." He laughed. But I know he meant it. There's this unspoken bond between all of us. We've been through too much together to ever truly let go. Even if I move far away, they'll always be part of me. And maybe one day, they'll visit. Maybe we'll sit around a small fire. No cameras, no lights, just stories and laughter. That's the kind of life I want to end up with. Not one that's constantly being watched, but one that's deeply lived. Sometimes I wonder what ARMY would say if they could really see me like this. Not the stage version, not the perfect image, but the human underneath. The one who worries, doubts, gets lonely, questions his place in the world. Would they still love me the same? I think they would. Because the truth is, their love has never been about perfection. It's about connection. And I think they'd understand that this decision, choosing not to marry in Korea, isn't rejection. It's an act of protection. For me, for the person I'll love, and maybe even for them too. Because some parts of life are meant to stay behind the curtain. Not because they're secrets, but because they're sacred. I used to think honesty meant telling everyone everything. Now, I think honesty just means not lying to yourself. And that's what I'm doing now, being honest. I'm not ready to promise my life in a place where it doesn't feel like mine anymore. I'm ready to build something different. Somewhere the world doesn't know every corner of me. Somewhere I can start again. Quietly, truthfully, freely. Maybe one day, when I'm old, I'll look back on all this and smile. Maybe I'll tell my kids about the years I spent on stage, about the people who loved me even when they didn't know me, about the moments that made me who I am. And maybe I'll tell them why I chose peace over applause, why I chose silence over spectacle, why I chose love over expectation. Because at the end of the day, that's all I've ever wanted to be loved. Not for being Jungkook, but for being me. There's something strange about getting older in front of the world. You start to notice how every milestone becomes public property. When you're young, it's exciting. People cheering for every achievement, every haircut, every song. But as you grow, the cheers start to feel heavier because they don't stop when you need them to. They follow you everywhere, even when you're trying to be quiet. And when it comes to something as personal as marriage, that kind of noise becomes unbearable. You can't take vows surrounded by the sound of commentary. You can't start a life with someone when everyone's already decided what kind of couple you should be. I used to think I could handle it. I told myself I could live both lives, the public one and the private one. But the truth is, one always eats the other. You either become completely open and lose your soul, or you hide everything and lose yourself. There's no balance, at least not here. That's why I know deep down that if I ever want to love someone properly, it has to be somewhere the noise can't reach. Somewhere far enough that I can hear my own thoughts again. Somewhere where her voice is louder than the world's. There was this one moment a few months ago that made everything clear. We were at a big event, hundreds of cameras flashing. And at some point, someone asked me, "When are you getting married?" Everyone laughed, waiting for me to give one of those funny answers that keeps things light. But in that second, something inside me froze. Because I realized that question isn't just small talk, it's pressure, it's expectation. It's the world telling me that even my most sacred decisions are up for public discussion. And it hit me hard. That's when I knew I had to draw a line somewhere. I told Yoongi about that night later. He just nodded, like he already knew. He said, "You don't owe anyone your peace." And that sentence has stayed with me ever since, because I've spent years thinking I owed everyone everything. My time, my effort, my voice, my emotions. But peace? No one has the right to that. Peace is the one thing you have to protect. Like, your life depends on it, because it does. Namjoon always has a way of turning thoughts into perspective. One night he said, "There's a difference between being seen and being understood." And I think that's what's missing here. I've been seen more than almost anyone I know, but how many people really understand me? How many truly see the person behind the performances, the headlines, the fame? That's why I crave distance. Not because I want to hide, but because I want to be seen clearly by one person without the distortion of the spotlight. Jimin, though, he worries. He thinks I'll get lonely, and maybe I will. He told me, "You always pretend you like being alone, but you hate it." He's not wrong. There's a part of me that fears the quiet, but I think that fear is exactly why I need to face it. You can't build love on top of fear. You have to meet yourself in the silence first, then share that peace with someone else. And I've never really had that chance. Not in Korea, not in this life that never stops spinning. Sometimes I imagine what it will feel like the day I finally decide to do it. No cameras, no headlines, no chaos. Just me, her, maybe a few close friends. Maybe I'll sing something small, not as an idol, but as a promise. Maybe Jimin will stand there smiling in that quiet way he does when words aren't needed. Maybe Taehyung will play guitar. Maybe Namjoon will read something poetic. Maybe Yoongi will just nod in approval from the corner, pretending he's not emotional. And maybe, for once, I'll look around and feel like my life belongs entirely to me. The world might never understand this decision. People might think it's strange, or dramatic, or unnecessary. But what they don't realize is that living under constant attention changes the way you see love. Love, for me, isn't something to be displayed. It's something to be protected. I don't want to post it. I want to preserve it. I don't want to prove it. I want to feel it. And that kind of love can't survive under the heat of public curiosity. It needs shade. It needs patience. It needs silence. And maybe that's what this really is, not rejection of Korea, but preservation of love. Because I know how this life works. The same people who cheer for you one day will dissect you the next. The same people who celebrate your happiness will turn it into content. I don't blame them, it's just how the world works now. But I won't let that world define my happiness. I've already let it define enough of me. So if someday people hear that I got married quietly somewhere far away, I hope they don't feel betrayed. I hope they understand that it wasn't secrecy, it was love. It was me choosing peace over performance, truth over applause, life over legend. Because I've realized something. You can build an empire out of love songs, but if you can't protect the love itself, what's the point? There's a moment that keeps replaying in my head lately, something so small, but it changed the way I see everything. I was visiting my mom a few months ago. She was in the kitchen, humming one of our older songs while making dinner. The smell of garlic and soy sauce filled the air, and for a few minutes, it felt like time had stopped. No cameras, no staff, no one calling my name, just home. I sat there watching her move around the kitchen and realized this is what peace feels like. Ordinary moments, simple warmth, no pressure to perform. And for the first time, I wondered, what if this is what love is supposed to look like too? Not fireworks, not headlines, just stillness. She asked me about marriage that night, like mothers do. She smiled and said, "You're not getting any younger, Jungkook." And I laughed, told her, "You sound like the internet." But then she got quiet. She looked at me and said softly, "I just want you to be happy, but I know happiness is hard for you here." That hit me like a wave. Because she's right, she always has been. Happiness here comes with a price tag. Every joy is public. Every tear becomes content. You can't even fall in love without it being turned into a debate. And my mom knows me too well. She knows I crave the kind of life that doesn't need validation to feel real. I told her about my plan not to marry in Korea. Not because I want to run, but because I want to protect. She listened, nodding slowly, like she already knew. Then she said something that stayed with me. If you love someone, love them in a way that the world can't touch. That sentence hasn't left my mind since. Because that's the kind of love I want. One that can't be sold, can't be photographed, can't be picked apart. Love that's real enough to survive without proof. Sometimes I think about how strange it is to be loved by millions and still worry about being misunderstood. But that's the truth of fame. It gives you everything and takes everything at the same time. It gives you voices cheering your name, but takes away the quiet ones who might have whispered it just for you. It gives you power, but steals your privacy. It gives you connection, but replaces it with distance. And you learn to live with that contradiction, to smile through it, to keep performing, even when your heart just wants silence. But I don't want my marriage to feel like another stage. I don't want love that comes with lighting, setups, and camera angles. I want it in the dark, in the soft, unrecorded corners of life. When I talked about this with Namjoon again, he said, "You're not rejecting Korea. You're redefining home." That sentence made everything clearer. Because home isn't a place, it's a feeling. It's where you can breathe without apology. It's where your love doesn't have to be explained or defended. And if I can't find that here, then I'll build it somewhere else. Somewhere small, quiet, unassuming, a house with no gate, no guards, no constant noise, just wind, laughter, and peace. Jimin came over a few nights later. We sat on the floor eating delivery food and talking like we always do. I told him more about my plan, and he just smiled faintly. "You always follow your heart," he said, "even when it breaks you a little." He's right. I've never been good at choosing what's easy. I've always chased what feels true, no matter how much it costs. Maybe this is another truth I have to face. That the kind of life I want doesn't fit inside the one I've been living. I asked him if he thought people would understand. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Some will, some won't. But understanding isn't love, Jungkook. Real love doesn't need reasons." And I think he meant that not just about relationships, but about everything. Music, family, decisions, even ourselves. Sometimes you have to stop explaining and just live your truth. The people who really love you will feel it, even if they don't agree with it. I've learned that peace isn't about escaping, it's about choosing what deserves your energy. I've given my energy to music, to fans, to the world for so long, and I'll never stop being grateful for that. But now I want to give it to something quieter, something private, something that doesn't need applause to be meaningful. So when people ask me where I'll marry, I think I'll just say, somewhere the world can't find. Because love, at least for me, isn't about being seen, it's about being safe. And the only way to keep it safe is to keep it sacred. Maybe that means leaving. Maybe that means starting again. But whatever it means, I know this much. I'd rather have a love that's invisible and real than one that's visible and hollow. There's this thing about growing older that nobody really warns you about. You start to understand silence in a way you never did before. When I was younger, silence used to scare me. It felt like emptiness, like failure, like something was missing. But now I see it differently. Silence is truth. It's a space where you can finally hear yourself think. It's where honesty lives. And maybe that's why I've started craving it so much, because my whole life has been noise. Good noise, beautiful noise, but still noise. Cheers, cameras, questions, expectations, all of it wrapping around me until I can't tell where the sound ends and where I begin. And when I imagine marriage, real, quiet, grounded marriage, I don't hear that noise anymore. I hear silence. I hear peace. Sometimes I test myself. I'll turn off my phone for a few hours just to see how it feels. And for those few hours, it's like I remember who I am without all the notifications and opinions. No updates, no schedules, no filters, just air, just space. It's strange how freedom can feel so unfamiliar when you've lived this way for so long. But in those moments, I can almost see it the life I want. A small house near water, the sound of waves instead of applause, mornings that begin with coffee instead of call times. That's where I see her too. Not a fantasy, not someone the world expects me to be with, just the kind of person who brings calm instead of chaos. The kind of love that doesn't need to be seen to exist. Taehyung once told me that we're all searching for the version of ourselves we lost along the way. I think that's what I've been doing quietly. Trying to find the version of Jungkook who lived before everything got so loud. The kid who loved music because it made him feel alive, not because it was his responsibility. The kid who believed love was simple, not strategic. Sometimes I catch glimpses of him when I'm alone, when I'm painting or walking or sitting at the piano. And I think maybe he's still in there somewhere waiting for me to come back. Maybe that's who I want to bring into my next chapter. Not the idol, not the brand, just the boy who started it all. When Yoongi heard me say that once, he nodded and said, "Then marry as that boy, not the man the world built." And I understood what he meant. Because the world will always try to shape you into something recognizable, something marketable, something perfect. But love doesn't want your perfection, it wants your truth. And I think that's why I can't do it here. Because here, I'll always be performing, even when I don't mean to. The stage doesn't end when the show does. It follows you everywhere, even to the altar. Jin once joked that if I got married abroad, he'd be the first to crash the wedding. I'll be the one yelling objection in the back, he said. But I know he meant it with love, because he gets it. He's lived in this glass house too. And when he laughs about things like that, it's his way of saying, do what you need to do, kid. That's the kind of love I'm grateful for. The kind that doesn't chain you, it releases you. Every member has taught me that in their own way. Namjoon taught me reflection. Yoongi taught me stillness. Hobi taught me faith. Jin taught me humor. Taehyung taught me ease. And Jimin, he taught me heart. Those lessons are what will carry me into whatever comes next. There's a memory I have of Jimin and me sitting backstage one night after a concert. Everyone had left, the arena was dark, and the seats were empty, thousands of them. He looked out and said, "It's crazy, isn't it? How we fill places like this and still sometimes feel alone." I never forgot that, because it's true. The more people see you, the lonelier it can get. That's why I think love, for me, can't exist in the same space as fame. It's not because I don't appreciate it, it's because fame amplifies everything except intimacy. It makes everything louder except the one thing that matters, connection. So when I say I won't marry in Korea, it's not a rejection of where I come from. It's me finally making space for who I've become. It's me learning how to stop explaining myself, how to stop trying to please everyone, how to love someone without apology. It's about building a world where my heart can finally rest, even if it means stepping away from the one that built me. I know some people will say it's sad, that it sounds lonely, but to me, it sounds like freedom. It sounds like coming home to a version of myself I lost somewhere between fame and expectation. And maybe that's what love really is, not the fireworks, not the noise, but the quiet decision to choose peace over pressure. So no matter what people think, I'll stand by this. I'll choose the silence. Because for once, I'm not choosing what looks right. I'm choosing what feels right. There's something that happens when you spend half your life trying to make people happy. You start to forget what happiness means for you. I used to think it was success. Sold out shows, awards, trending songs, headlines that said Jungkook did it again. But lately, I've realized those moments are flashes, not foundations. They burn bright, but they don't last. And when the lights go out, you're left with yourself. That's the real test. Who are you when no one's cheering? Who are you when no one needs you to perform? I think that's what I'm finally trying to figure out before I promise my life to someone else. I was talking to Namjoon about this a few weeks ago. We were walking by the river late at night, the same place we used to go when everything felt too heavy. He said, "You've always been the kind of person who feels everything too deeply. That's your gift, but also your curse." And he's right. I've always absorbed everything, the energy of crowds, the emotions of fans, the moods of the people around me. It's beautiful, but it's exhausting. Sometimes I just want to feel something that isn't tied to anyone else's expectations. I want to wake up and not think about how every move might affect a headline or a rumor. I want to breathe without wondering who's watching. That's what scares me about the idea of marrying here. Because love, to me, is supposed to be a refuge. But in this life, even love would turn into content. People would take pictures of our hands, analyze our expressions, invent stories that aren't real. I've seen it happen too many times to others, how a pure moment gets twisted into something it's not. And I refuse to let that be my story. I want the first time I say I do to be something that belongs only to the person standing in front of me, not to the world, not to the internet, not to the media, just us. Sometimes Jimin teases me saying, "You talk about peace like it's a person you're in love with." Maybe it is. Maybe peace is the only thing I've been chasing without realizing it. Because when you've lived in chaos long enough, peace starts to feel like the rarest kind of love. And I think that's what I want to give to someone, peace. Not diamonds, not fame, not luxury, just peace. The kind that comes from knowing you can be yourself without fear. That's something I can't promise if we stay here, not with the weight of everything I carry. Yoongi once told me, "The world doesn't know how to leave people like us alone." He wasn't complaining, just stating a fact. And I know he's right. That's why sometimes distance isn't running away, it's survival. People think moving away, getting married quietly, or choosing privacy means hiding. But to me, it means protecting the parts of life that still feel real. Fame has already taken so much my time, my normalcy, my anonymity. I can't let it take love too. Taehyung keeps saying that I romanticize solitude, and maybe I do. But he also told me once that he envied how sure I am about what I want. I laughed because I don't feel sure most days. But when I think about love, I feel a kind of clarity that doesn't leave me. I can see it vividly a morning with no alarms, someone making coffee while the sun filters through the window, laughter echoing in a small kitchen. That's it. That's all I want. No cameras, no noise, just something that feels real enough to lose track of time. The funny thing is, I used to dream about marriage, like it was a scene from a movie. Grand, emotional, unforgettable. Now I dream about it like it's a secret, soft, sacred, hidden from everything that could ruin it. I don't care if the world never sees it. I just want to live it. Because the truth is, not everything beautiful needs an audience. Some things are meant to be kept, not shared. When I told my mom about that dream, she smiled and said, "You sound like your father." She told me how he once said that love is not about showing, it's about staying. And maybe that's what I'm trying to do. Stay true, stay real, stay grounded. I spent too many years trying to prove myself to the world. I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to prove my love too. So if one day I disappear from the spotlight for a while, I hope people understand. It won't be because I've given up, it'll be because I've finally arrived somewhere I've been searching for my whole life. Somewhere where my name doesn't echo louder than my heartbeat. Somewhere where love doesn't need permission to exist. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest. Somewhere far enough that when I whisper, "I love you," only one person hears it. There's a night that I keep going back to in my head. It was after a concert in Japan, the last show of the tour. Everyone was tired, but we were high on adrenaline. That strange mix of exhaustion and gratitude that only comes after giving everything you have on stage. When I got back to the hotel, I took a shower, turned off all the lights, and sat on the floor by the window. The city below was glowing millions of little lights scattered across the skyline. And for a while, I just sat there watching them, realizing that every single one of those lights belonged to someone with a life as complex as mine. Someone with their own problems, their own secrets, their own version of love. And it made me think maybe the best kind of love isn't the one everyone can see, but the one that stays quietly alive in the dark. The older I get, the more I crave that kind of quiet. When I was younger, I thought love had to be loud to be real. I thought it needed to be proven, but loud things fade fast. They burn out. Quiet love, though it lasts. It's not about the grand gestures. It's about the way someone looks at you when no one else is around. It's about how they treat you when the world isn't watching. That's the kind of love I want. And I can't have that if the world never stops watching me. I remember once I told Taehyung about this. He laughed and said, "You sound like you're ready to disappear." And I told him, maybe disappearing isn't the same as leaving. Maybe it's just finally being where I belong. He didn't say anything after that. He just smiled the way he does when he understands, but doesn't want to make it heavier. I think he gets it even if he won't admit it. Because deep down, all of us, me, him, Jimin, the others, we're all trying to find our own version of peace. We've spent so much time being each other's family, each other's strength, but now it's like we're all learning how to stand alone. It's strange and beautiful at the same time. I told Jimin about that night too, about the city lights and the silence. He said, "You always look for meaning in everything." Maybe he's right, but maybe meaning is all I have left. Fame, success, love, they all feel temporary, but meaning? That's the thing that stays. And I think that's what I'm chasing. A life that means something even if no one else sees it. A love that means something even if it's invisible. Yoongi once told me, when you live in noise long enough, you forget how to recognize peace. And he was right. The first time I tried to slow down, it felt wrong. I didn't know what to do with the quiet. It was like my brain didn't know how to function without chaos. But over time, I started to realize that peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the acceptance of stillness. It's learning to sit in your own company without running from yourself. That's what I want to build my marriage on. Not the rush, not the drama, not the spectacle, just stillness, just truth. When I picture my wedding now, it's nothing like the versions people imagine. There's no glitter, no cameras, no guests, I barely know. It's small, maybe just me, her, a few close people who understand what this means. Maybe the members will be there, maybe my family, Maybe Jimin will cry. Definitely Jimin will cry. Taehyung will joke until someone tells him to stop. Yoongi will keep looking away so no one sees how emotional he is. Namjoon will probably write something beautiful and read it, his voice shaking just a little. Jinhyung will tease me about finally growing up, and Hobi will make sure everyone's laughing again. It won't be perfect, but it'll be real.